Okay, Mr. Most Days Off. Now we're ready for the TeePublic ad.
Head over to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly right now to support our show. Get yourself some Best Darn Diddly merchandise and help grow our podcast. I messed up there. Can I get another take?
Okay, just a second.
Out of the way, amateur. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to tpublic.com/bestdarndiddly. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to patreon.com/bestdarndiddly. Go to popthreads.com and save 15% with the discount code Simpsons. Hey, it's Krusty. Go to bestdarndiddly.com to get all your podcast needs from the greatest show on earth. Learn from a professional, kid.
All right, Krusty. We're ready for your take. Krusty?
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddly Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and today we have a futuristic past episode to talk about. We have a paradox in the timeline, my friends, but we are going to get to that first. Joining me as always, and strutting around like he owns the place, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I own all places that exist in the year 2010, my friend. I did not remember that that's the time that this episode took place, and it kind of threw me for a loop when I first heard the year in this one.
I think it's funny that Simpsons did it to Back to the Future, because that actually happened. This date happened before the Back to the Future date occurred, even though they took a longer jump earlier. Again, time paradoxes, but I'm calling this a roundabout Simpsons did it.
All right, I like it. Even though Futurama, Back to the Future talked about it first, the Simpsons timeline-wise did it first. So yeah, we'll walk you through the whole path. So this is going to take a little while. You know how Miles and I get off track a little bit. But I better go ahead and throw it back to you, my friend. The man, the myth, the mightily smightily, which is kind of way in the past, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. It is Miles.
The mightily is medieval, but the smightily is all Flanders. So we are talking about Lisa's Wedding today, which is another just fantastic episode. Another episode that has not only humor, but quite a bit of heart and weight to it as well. And it's an episode that I remember very well and very fondly. And I actually feel like, for the most part, this is an episode that I remembered almost every beat of the show pretty closely. I don't know if it's just because it's such a tight package. It's a lot of plot that happens in a very short amount of time, and maybe that helps to keep the narrative congruent. But this whole episode I remember very, very clearly.
Even the music is very mightily as well in this episode. So, it's just, we've talked about it before. We're rough sometimes on the Marge and Lisa episodes, but this episode and then the last Lisa episode we just have really stepped up their game. And this one's up there, man. This one and Summer of 4'2" are I think my two real big, heavy Lisa ones that I just absolutely love. And the animation in this one, too. When you're in the future, Lisa and Hugh look so much like real people compared to other Springfield adults that you see throughout the years. And I don't know, there's just a little bit of a different feel to this episode, and it really pays off.
You know, I believe we talked, I can't remember which Simpsons writer it was. I believe it was with Mike Reese the first time he was on our show. Not last week, but when he joined us for Treehouse of Horror 5. He talked about the concept of when they do shows like this, it's a lot of work on the animation department because they have to redo everything. So very similar to a Treehouse of Horror where they have a lot of new sets and character designs that they don't normally use. This episode, going to the future, they had to redesign every single set. A lot of places that we see and are familiar with in the timeline of The Simpsons, or the present timeline of The Simpsons, we jump to 15 years in the future, which is now actually 8 years in the past, to see all of these new models of both buildings, structures, plants, and, of course, the people and how they've aged. And for the most part, it's really interesting and a lot of fun to see how these characters have aged.
One of my complaints, though, about this episode is I feel like everybody gets aged too far for just 15 years. Like, I don't remember that we know that Ned is actually, like, 60 yet, but you get a quick glimpse of Ned and Maude, which is weird because technically she's dead by this time. And they look really, really old. And I was like, it's just 15 years? I mean, Homer's, 39? So that makes him 54? I mean, he should.
But he's a really unhealthy 54, to be fair.
But I mean, even people like Krusty, just so old. Moe, even it's a little weird when you think about how short of a time it actually is.
So, since you brought it up specifically, I will say that the Krusty design is in fact based on Groucho Marx as he was entering his latter years of life. So that was kind of a
joke.
Visual joke. So,
Yeah.
with the exception of him, though, still, I can see your point. He was one of the more extreme cases. I liked a lot what they did with Mr. Burns, but we'll hold off on that and get there here in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and get started with this episode for now, because again, we do have quite a bit to get through. This episode, Lisa's Wedding, originally aired on March 19th, 1995. We got a chalk gag of I will not strut around like I own the place. And we got a very funny but silly couch gag where the Simpsons sit on the couch and get sprung into their ceiling, complete with a boing sound right off the get-go.
You see all their feet dangling down.
Yeah, they're like hanging from the ceiling, which is great. But the episode actually opens in an unusual setting. We have two knights ferociously battling each other, and one actually conks the other in the head with a spiked ball before taking off his helmet and revealing that it is none other than Ned Flanders battling Mr. Smithers at a Renaissance fair.
Zounds, I did thee mightily smightily. Zounds is a Renaissance English word short for God's wounds, but the smightily, that's pure Flanders.
And of course, Smithers is just lying there, like, basically dying, asking someone to please call a doctor. Bart is immediately bored with all of this, which actually is kind of somewhat weird, seeing as he just watched probably the most interesting part of the Renaissance fair, being two knights battling, but all he replies with is, these Renaissance fairs are so boring.
Oh, really? Did you see the loom? I took loom in high school.
And we see Marge actually loom a message to Bart about how cool looms are. Or, hi Bart, I'm weaving on a loom, I think is what it says. But Bart is, of course, not impressed at all. I will make a quick observation here that was pointed out by the director's commentary that this is actually a fairly rare instance where Bart is seen holding Maggie. Marge actually hands Maggie over to Bart before she goes and sits on the loom, and there's not a lot of sequences in The Simpsons where we see the oldest child holding the youngest.
Huh, that's an interesting observation. I never thought about that before.
I had not either. I thought it was kind of a fun thing to notice.
You know, I do kind of want to see, like, a fight in the future with Smithers and Flanders where they're, like, fist fighting and not in armor. Because I feel like if the two of them are really going at it, Smithers knows some stuff. I mean, he does some pretty dirty work for Burns, and Flanders has all that, like, hidden Flanders strength. And I just think it'd be real interesting to see them in, like, a Die Hard type of fight.
Fair?
Dunna! Dunna!
You know, there was a game that came out in the 90s called Simpsons Wrestling, where I think you could have that dream matchup if you really wanted to, Rich.
Let's not go down that path.
You're not wrong to avoid it. As much as I love The Simpsons and wrestling, that is one of the most garbage games of all time, unfortunately.
Oakley dokley.
But moving on with the Renaissance Fair, Homer is having a hell of a good time, but to be fair, he's really only interested in the food, to which there is quite a lot. We see Lunch Lady Doris is actually cooking a pig complete with the apple in its mouth, like rotating it over a fire, and Homer's doing this great bit where he's kind of rotating all the way over with the pig and then immediately like swapping back over to reset so he can just keep making eye contact with this animal that he so desires to eat.
Can I have some?
Mine ears are only open to the pleas of those who speak ye old English.
Sweet maiden of the spit, Grant now my boon, that I might sup on suckling pig this noon.
Whatever. I love Lunch Lady Doris. This is a perfect role for her. And Doris does succumb to Homer's request. She gives him the pig, and in the next scene, we actually just see him munching on it as he's walking across the lawn alongside Lisa.
Oh, I've eaten 8 different meats. I am a true Renaissance man.
How?
I'll go to the first aid tent and tell them to plug in ye old stomach pump.
Which, shame on Lisa, because I never see her go to the first aid tent in this episode at all. She gets distracted way too easily and causes the death of Homer. The end.
That's the whole episode. It's one of those darkest moments in Simpsons history, and we never see the character of Homer again for the rest of the series. Or
the murkiniest of the
murkinessy moment of them all. Yeah, so actually what happens, though, is Lisa does, in fact, get distracted. She sees Police Chief Wiggum, who's got his tent up. It's actually Friar Wiggum's Fantastical Beastarium, which is filled with some pretty interesting beasts of old times, I guess. Some animals I wasn't familiar with, to be honest. Alright, you gaze on yonder fabled beast of yore. Behold, the rarest of the rare, and the mythological 2-headed hound, born with only 1 head. Ooh, and here, out of the mist of history, the legendary Equilax, a horse with the head of a rabbit and the body of a rabbit. Ooh, and it's galloping away.
And I love that you see signs, too, that say, like, Chimera and Manticore. And it's just all regular pets.
It's all just pets. I love as Lisa's chasing off after the bunny, she's actually yelling out, "Here, bunny! Here, bunny! Bunny!" And Wiggum corrects her, "Here, Escalax!" So, Lisa does in fact chase this Escalax, or bunny, all through the forest, and we actually notice that it starts to get darker and darker as she goes along. She approaches a tent that almost came out of nowhere, and curiosity takes her inside. When she opens the tent flap, a woman greets her.
"I've been waiting for you, Lisa."
"How did you know my name?"
"Your name tag."
And we see it says on her shirt, "Hi, I'm Lady Lisa."
"Would you like to know your future?"
"Sorry, I don't believe in fortune telling. I should go."
"What's your hurry? Bart and Maggie and Marge are all at the joust, and Homer is heckling the puppet show."
Wow, you can see into the present. We get this woman who claims she's going to be able to tell Lisa all about what her future will hold, and she busts out a tarot deck. I love we get things like when she pulls out the death card, Lisa's upset, but she explains, no, that's good. It means transition and change. But then when she gets the happy squirrel card, that, of course, is bad.
Possibly. The cards are vague and mysterious.
But they do seem to be revealing the story of Lisa's first love. And kind of reluctantly, Lisa agrees to hear about it.
I honestly have a problem with this line to how it ties into the end of the episode. Because at the end of the episode, Lisa argues that she's supposed to be shown her true love. And I'm like, no, the lady told you she was going to tell you about your first love. Pay attention, Lisa.
Come on, Lisa, you're better than that. You went to an Eastern university in the year 2010, for crying out loud.
But I don't know why that's always bothered me in this episode.
That's actually a really funny observation. I didn't notice that her dialogue, but you're absolutely right. It never says anything about her true love. It just says she's going to talk about her first love. Dun, dun, dun. But I do love this transition as we move into the future, because we start to see what the future looks like. And the woman warns, the world has become a very different place. In our opening shot, we see marching robots going across in line with one another. And then almost immediately it pans out, and we also see scarecrows and lions and some Dorothys, and we see a sign that says, "The Wizard of Oz auditions today." But it's such a great little bit where they try to make you think it's like a future being overtaken by robots.
I can't wait to see that play. And who dresses in full costumes to an audition?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you know what? Dress for the job you want, right?
No, I absolutely love the visual gag, though.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. There's a couple of other really cool things. Like there's a digital tree that was planted with a memorial in memory of the real tree that lied here or something of that nature.
I just took that as all trees were dead at that point, so it's just a memory of tree.
Yeah. I like that one of the students starts to glitch out, so the student just kicks it to fix it again. So good. Lisa is having a bit of a run of bad luck, though. We actually see an older Lisa for the first time, which I have to say that I did think her character looked really good, like in terms of they aged her appropriately to look like a college student, and I thought it was a pretty cool look for her. She's immediately seen at a drinking fountain where she actually knocks into somebody, and they kind of have a heated moment telling each other to watch it and being somewhat rude.
The dude takes a drink first. Like, come on.
It's very not considerate. Yeah, absolutely. Not very gentlemanlike.
Nope. Maybe that was a sign before she ever even met him.
Interesting. That man is instantly the most annoying person I have ever met. But she knows that a soy-based snack will calm her down, and she heads over to the vending machine, only to see that same guy buying the very last soy pop out of the machine.
Oh,
super frustrating.
It's now with gag suppressant, too, on those soy pops.
That's so funny. So Lisa's once again annoyed by this same man, and then once again, immediately after, she goes to catch the elevator, and he catches it and doesn't hold it for her, forcing her to take the stairs. I love this bit because she's actually kind of walking up at the same pace, so you see him enjoying his soy pop as she's just getting angrier and angrier and angrier as she climbs right along with him.
But see, it's not at the same pace initially. Initially, he's going up an elevator, and like she's literally like half a floor below him. But in the next instance, she's gone up to the next stairwell, and he's below her all of a sudden, coming up at the same pace as her. And I thought, what kind of fucking future elevator is this? How many times has he gone up?
We don't know how elevators work in 2010, Richie. We haven't gotten there.
They go left
yet.
to right, too, now.
Lisa's kind of had her, wit's end with this guy, but whatever. She's made it to the library. She just needs to get her book. She asked the librarian for Ecosystem of the Marsh by Thompson, only to be informed that the last copy was just signed out by, Hugh Parkfield. He's right over there. And at first, we see the backside of a man that looks very similar to this person in the elevator. And Lisa immediately loses it. Like, oh my god, I cannot believe this one same guy keeps doing this to me. He turns around and reveals that it's not him, so it wasn't that big of a coincidence. Or was it? Because he was holding the book for Hugh Parkfield, the man that has been irking Lisa all morning long.
Doe!
Immediately, Lisa actually approaches Hugh and calls him out, saying that that's the book I need. You're probably going to take forever with it.
I can read faster than you.
I read at a 78th grade level.
Right here.
And we see Lisa and Hugh start going into a read-off, I guess, for lack of a better word. They are both frantically reading as fast as they can. We get a lot of bits of dialogue, things like, finish the page?
Ages ago.
Ugh.
I'll get the dictionary.
Why?
You'll see when you get there. The word stochastic.
Pertaining to a process involving a randomly determined sequence of observations. Huh. And then they kind of take a moment and stare at each other, looking each other in the eyes, and all of the heat between them turns to passion, and they start making out right there in the library. And the librarian is actually somewhat moved by this, confused by this. She's processing. She says, first they hate each other, now all of a sudden they love each other. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Of course not. You're a robot.
We see the librarian actually shed a single tear from her tear duct, which is just enough moisture to cause this robot to malfunction and its head explodes. David Merkin on the commentary points out that this was his absolute favorite thing about this episode.
It was kind of graphic, like when the actual rest of the head started like melting down too. So that's not surprising to me that Merkin liked it.
Well, and then of course they're gonna triple down on it really later when we get there. But for now, we start to see the budding romance of Lisa and Hugh, who Hugh, by the way, was not actually voiced by Hugh Grant, but he was very much intended to be modeled after Hugh Grant. That was intentional if you see similarities. And of course, the name's kind of a dead giveaway.
When I was younger, I always assumed it was Hugh Grant that was doing this episode for like
So did
the
I.
first few times I saw the episode.
Yeah, I was somewhat surprised that I kind of thought it was Hugh Grant, even going back to revisit it until I read the trivia, and I was like, oh, huh. I just kind of assumed. It would have been a perfect guest spot for him.
Yeah, I assumed that he was too caught up in his romantic rom-com movies to be able to spend 5 days on a Simpsons episode or one day.
Well, it's not like he was as big of a star as, say, Jim Carrey at the time, and I absolutely love that their first date, or I believe what's depicted as their first date, is they actually go to a film festival, the 40 Classic Films starring Jim Carrey.
I mean, by 2010, they could probably do one of those, right?
It wouldn't have, I mean, especially at the time, Jim Carrey's star power was huge. I mean, this was 1995. This was, I believe, in between the two Ace Ventura movies. Like, this was, like, before The Mask even blew up, I think. Somewhere right in that timeline, though, in that same area. So, huge star, and they were kind of poking fun at the idea that, you know, all of his zany comedies, but you're absolutely right. He could easily have had this if he doesn't already. I do like the dialogue quite a bit where they talk about no one really understood Jim Carrey. And even Lisa, yeah, he can make you laugh with no more than a frantic flailing of his limbs. We actually get a scene that on the commentary they talked about how they were surprised that they did not get any feedback from the censors on this, because we actually go to the dormitory and actually Dr. and Mrs. Dre Hall, which is fantastic. Little shout out to Dr. Dre. But Hugh and Lisa are laying in the same dorm bed together. So they're, you know, little racy, some college kids just lying there having a chat, which is all that college kids ever do in bed, I'm certain.
I never thought twice about that when I was younger watching this episode.
And they didn't actually get called out. They just said that that's the type of bullshit that they usually get called out on, that they have to fight.
Makes sense. I mean, even though you see Marge and Homer naked in bed all the time.
Hugh and Lisa are starting to find that they have a lot in common.
We're both studying the environment. We're both utterly humorless about our vegetarianism. And we both love the Rolling Stones.
And you can see that the Rolling Stones have like a we're in wheelchairs tour essentially happening. But since they brought up the Rolling Stones, we've seen already a couple of things that The Simpsons got right. There were some semi-accurate predictions going into 2010. One of them is that the Rolling Stones were in fact still touring in the 2010s. You could, in fact, pay for vending machines with a credit card, which is what Hugh did for the soy pop earlier. And we will see later on things like the expanded cable lineup that they have at Moe's Tavern, video phones, which might look very similar to Skype. And even though this was a little bit more advanced, there was absolutely virtual reality setups, as not necessarily as in detailed as the one we see at Moe's, but there was virtuality publicly available in 2010.
That we'll get there, but that's the only scene I did not remember at all from the episode. Was that like little 10 seconds?
Watch your virtual darts. For now, though, we see again Lisa and Hugh are just really starting to fall for each other, and Hugh actually invites Lisa to come home with him for the summer holiday to Parkfield Manor. And Lisa cannot wait to get there. She does want to make sure they can get vegetarian meals at the parents' house, though.
Yes, we can, Lisa.
That's good, because eating animals is wrong.
So very wrong.
When will the world learn?
I don't know. I just don't know. They kind of predicted that kind of movement as well, and I mean that, like, vegetarianism's always been a movement, but, like, the intensity that comes with it now, with apologies to all our vegetarian friends. Love you, Charlie.
Oh yeah, future guest of the show. Yeah, that would have been appropriate. But I don't know about the predicting of that movement in this regard, because, I mean, I guess I see what you're saying. There's a lot of documentaries made recently, but just more pointing out, like, animal cruelty and whatnot. I think vegetarian has been around as a diet for a long time, but some of the ins and outs of farming may be more public knowledge now, but you've got, like, 8 documentaries on Netflix you can go to for that information. Make your own choices. Eat what you want to. Try not to
So
be a dick.
very wrong.
Be cromulent to each other and to animals. But also,
Especially if you're eating
animals
those
are
animals.
delicious, so yeah, it's fine.
They're delicious.
Delicious. Next up, we see Lisa and Hugh are actually flying into London. They pass Big Ben, which has been replaced. The clock tower itself has been replaced with a digital clock, which is great. And even better, the time's reset because it's just flashing at 12. So clearly the power had gone out at some point, and no one bothered to reset it.
That's not like a big stretch of something that could actually happen with the way our world works these days.
No, not at all. I mean, they're turning buildings in downtown Dallas into billboards, like where the outer windows like actually play advertisements, like that. That's crazy. It's absolutely the future. It's gonna be the Running Man before we know it.
No,
The
I
book-
don't want to run anymore. You're screwed if it's Running Man, Miles. Let's be honest.
I hope it's Swimming Man. That would be much better for me. Yes. Well, Lisa is almost immediately put into an awkward social situation because of the differences in their cultures. She points out that they have beautiful dinnerware, Mrs. Parkfield.
Thank you, Lisa. They were made from the finest family in Britain.
I don't know how we ended up with them.
Uh-oh. Should I laugh? Was that dry British wit or subtle self-pity? Oh, they're staring at me. Better respond. Ha ha.
Oh, it's good to hear a boisterous American laugh.
I love that part.
I like this whole concept with the idea of British humor and Lisa not knowing how to handle it. Really funny stuff. Lisa continues to point out some things that she enjoys. She points out a painting that she likes, and judging by the clothing, she guesses 17th century. But that's actually just Uncle Eldred, the crazy old uncle.
I get me brain medicine from the National Health.
So Lisa's getting used to the countryside, and she's starting to really enjoy it, and obviously really enjoying Hugh as well. They take a horseback ride up into the hillside where Hugh has prepared a picnic, and he straight out says he wants everything to be perfect for her. He knows that Americans like everything to be fireworks, and literally as he says that, the fireworks start to go off in the distance.
Oh.
And just as Lisa is fully captivated by Hugh's charm, he has prepared a digital board to light up in the words, "Lisa, will you do me the honor of giving me your hand in the holy tradition of Matra?" And it starts to sparkle out and fail, essentially. He has technical difficulties.
Oh, blast. Go to plan B.
And we see a cow walk out from behind a bush with a hand-painted sign that says, "Marry me." Lisa, of course, is ecstatic. "Yes, I will!" They kiss, and immediately we see some of the help from Hugh's estate starting to cry and discuss just how beautiful and wonderful it is that Master Hugh has found a true love. Unfortunately, the help are apparently robots, and those tears once again cause their heads to explode. And as Richie so perfectly pointed out, they melt in this very, very graphic manner.
What I want to know is they really nailed the 2010 robot models. I mean, now we have the sex robots that are saying that they will eventually want to kill humans and whatnot, going all bender. But I mean, those 2010 robots, I feel like they nailed to a T.
Yeah, I think that they were pretty spot on. Another example of the technology the Simpsons got right.
I mean, we all remember the crying robots. That was just disastrous.
Yeah, melted rubber and wax everywhere. It was bad. That's what happened to Paris Hilton. Got it.
That's just the first thing that happened to Paris Hilton.
But that does, in fact, bring us to the end of our first act, We're going to go ahead and take a quick break, hear from some buddies of ours, and we'll be back for Act 2 of Lisa's Wedding.
I'm Jay.
I'm Bob.
And I'm Corey.
We are the Cretans Guild.
We're a trio of man-children whose friendship predates The Lion King, Green Day's Dookie, the N64, and the Chunnel.
We have backgrounds working in television, video games, radio broadcasting, creative writing, and pizza delivery. That's a large cheese, right?
On our podcast, Nerd or Not, you'll hear us talk about board games, TV, movies, comics, collectibles, video games, wrestling, theme parks. We even did a segment on f***ing pizza.
So check and listen to us on Podbean, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. And check out our socials on Twitter and Instagram under Cretans Guild.
Welcome to the Guild.
Hi, it's Mike Reese. I've been writing for The Simpsons for 30 years. I ran the show in seasons 3 and 4. I created The Critic. And now I've written a book. It's called Springfield Confidential, and it is the first insider's look at The Simpsons. It's filled with secrets, scandals, and tales of censorship and celebrities. It's a great book. It's like a Simpsons episode. It's fast, it's smart, and it's packed with hundreds of jokes, some of them funny. Please buy Springfield Confidential. You can order it now on Amazon.com.
We start our second act of Lisa's Wedding with a Skype call between Lisa and Marge. And it's our first glimpse into what the future Simpsons look like. We see Marge has aged quite a bit, but again, pretty appropriately, I would say. So far.
Maybe so.
But Lisa couldn't be more excited to share the news of her engagement, and she lets him know that she's getting married, but is concerned about Homer's involvement. And she wants to remind her mom, remember when I was little, we'd always plan my dream wedding, and you always promised to, keep Dad from ruining it?
Oh, don't worry, honey. I guarantee your father will behave.
But unfortunately, Marge has forgotten that she can be seen. She's sitting there crossing both fingers while she says this, and Lisa points out, Mom, it's a picture phone.
This? Oh no, I've just got a touch of the rheumatiz.
Oh!
Woo!
Mom, picture phone.
Well, I enjoy, we skipped over the part where she actually talks about Homer at first, and she's like, if only your father were still with us.
Oh, yeah.
But he left for work a few minutes ago.
Yeah, that reminds me of the doctor on Arrested Development who always gives news in, the worst possible way.
But you haven't seen Homer yet at this point, so, when she first says that line and pauses, you're like, Homer's
what?
dead?
Yeah.
Why would you do this?
How could you? And before we get to Homer, we're actually going to see a little bit of a glimpse into the future of Lisa's brother, Bart. And things are looking pretty good. I mean, he's on the phone. He's wearing a suit. He says, it's great news about Lisa. Well, listen, I better get back to work. And then we see what's really happening. Because as they pan out, we see that Bart isn't really wearing a suit sitting at a desk. He's sitting in a demolition construction machine wearing a suit t-shirt. And very, very happy that he's finally getting paid for this as we see him demolishing a building.
I have two thoughts on this instance. The initial reaction I have to this is, why is he just now saying they're finally paying me for this? Because it looks like he's very happy and it's something he's been doing for a while.
I think he's just talking about his overall destructive behavior.
Yeah, but he's saying they're finally paying me for this.
For being destructive. Yeah, that's what I mean. He's finally being paid for being destructive.
But the only reason he would have a purpose to say that line is if he just started the job, which I was going to save them by saying that, because I don't go into work and go, now, after I've been working there for years, and going, they're finally paying me for this. So I'm wondering if he just got that job.
That would make sense.
That's what I was going with.
Sure. I mean, he's only a few years older than Lisa. He would definitely still be, maybe looking for his
25.
And not to mention, we'll find out later that this is, of course, just what he's doing until he goes to law school, which we do know that Bart ends up as a Supreme Court justice in the future.
We also see times where he's living with Ralph and Lisa's in the White House and he's playing in a fake band.
Hey, man, life is a journey. There's lots of steps along the way.
There's alternate timelines.
So finally, we get to catch up with old Homer at the Springfield Nuclear Power Plant, where we first see that most of the work has been taken over by robots. And then we pass through a conference room where we can see both Carl and Lenny, who are sitting in suits and very clearly have been promoted to a much more powerful and dignified position. And then we see Sector 7G, where Homer, in the last 15 years, has not gotten promoted once. He's still doing the exact same thing he has always been doing. But he's super excited to hear the wonderful news from Marge. And right at that moment, he gets interrupted by his boss.
Hey there, with a personal call, Simpson.
Oh, but Mr. Milhouse, my little girl's getting married.
Lisa? Oh, my one true love.
I love all of this. So, obviously, Milhouse grew up and became Homer's boss at the power plant, which is already...
He didn't take over the Cracker
gotta be demeaning. Yeah, it's true. He didn't follow his dad's footsteps. But we also flash to a teenage acne version of Milhouse where he's driving a car and Lisa's explaining, "It's not you, Milhouse. I just don't plan to ever get married." Oh. And that's when Homer gets some bad news from his boss.
I think I'll write your performance evaluation now, Simpson.
So clearly still holding a grudge. But how sad is it that Milhouse clearly proposed to Lisa at some point?
Yeah, but it was one of those things where, like, he just sprung it on her and it wasn't ever anything too serious to begin with. But Homer seems really happy at the end of that scene, like he thinks he's going to get a good review or something.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think he quite understands what's happening. So we're going to get our first glimpse of Evergreen Terrace, and a lot has changed. As we pan up the street, we see all of these futuristic homes and houses, things that look more out of Futurama that hasn't even been in existence yet, by the way, when this was made, but that's kind of
that takes place in 3000. We still got a long ways to go.
Before the show was even created, though. It seems like it has a lot of visual similarities, though, I would say, until you get to the Simpsons home, which looks exactly like the Simpsons home. Always has, only with some clearly shoddily built by Homer additions to the home. I think he made an extended bedroom hanging off one end of the house into Flanders' yard, and then he built an additional room over the garage.
Yeah, it looks like a bunch of tree houses, basically.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it.
Which, for a tree house, they're excellent.
Yeah, that's true. They're above average tree houses, but if the building inspector is to check, they're definitely not rooms. Homer's actually really excited, and he's getting really, really into his daughter's wedding. He wants to call everyone and tell them the good news. It's actually really funny when he tries to pick up the phone. The phone is being used by Maggie upstairs, and Homer utters the line, "Will that girl ever shut up?"
I love that reoccurring joke in this episode.
Okay, Marge, I'll plan everything. We can have the reception at Moe's. Wait, why not have the whole wedding there? We'll do it on a Monday morning. There'll be fewer drunks.
Homer, don't take this personally, but I've obtained a court order to prevent you from planning this wedding.
And I'm going to declare this is absolutely my favorite bit in this whole episode, because Homer takes the documents, reads them very carefully, and then says, "Well, these seem to be in order. I'll be out in the back in the hammock."
Yeah, this is a fantastic moment. Really, really funny.
I love how, I love that Homer actually took the time to read them for some reason. That cracked me up. Like, if there wasn't...
And the fact that Marge got them in the first place.
Like, as if those court orders weren't obtained, Homer would absolutely wreck shop on this wedding. It's great. But the invitations have been sent, and the first recipient we see is none other than Waylon Smithers, who has a plus guest, and there's only one person he wants to bring. We see him pull a frozen Mr. Burns out of a slot in the wall, and he solemnly declares, "Oh, Mr. Burns, we'll thaw you out the second they discover the cure for 17 stab wounds in the back. How we doing, boys?"
Well, we're up to 15.
Yay!
Yay!
I love they're looking for the cure for 17 stabs on the back.
And they'll find it, Miles. They'll find it.
They'll get there one day. That's so good. They should check Maggie
Ooh.
for Prince. We also see that Principal Skinner has gotten an invitation, and he tells Miss Hoover that they've received an invitation to a wedding for the only student to ever graduate.
I love that they're showing a video with Troy McClure where Pepsi's teaching addition and subtraction.
Oh god, it's so much worse than that too, though, because it's not even like they're doing a good job. They're really just plugging Pepsi.
Yeah.
And you didn't even point out that the desks that these children are stacked into are 3 tiers tall. So you've got students on top of students on top of students in bunk desks learning from the Pepsi Corporation. If you have 3 Pepsis and drink 1, how much more refreshed are you? You, the redhead in the Chicago school system.
Pepsi?
Partial credit.
But I mean, with our cuts to the education system and our love of the almighty dollar, I could totally see this happening pretty soon.
This has already happened, Richie. Not to this extreme, but there have absolutely been contracts in place with soda companies to be a part of the education program. Now, they have not taken it to the point where Pepsi will get you partial credit on a exam or a pop quiz, but they do have contracts where they get like exclusive rights to advertise and put their products in the school and all sorts of things like that. So it's definitely slipping that direction.
Well, I mean, if the government's going to cut funding to the education program, they got to make up money somewhere, right?
Educate them with sugar.
Yeah. There's a Simpsons episode about that.
So I do actually really love, though, because when Skinner announces that they've been invited, it was actually to the only student to ever read at an adult level. And Miss Hoover immediately says, it must be Lisa Simpson, because, of course, Martin Prince perished in that science fair explosion. We pan down beneath the school, and we see caverns where a scarred, masked Martin Prince plays the piano.
Not quite perished, my lady love. Although some days I wish I had.
This is some Phantom of the Opera type of stuff going on right here. You know, this is kind of an interesting bit of information because most of the voices were done by the same actor. Sometimes they were modified. For instance, Bart was still voiced by Nancy Cartwright, but her voice was